sound hits before anyone sees it. A sharp, metallic crack splits the air inside St. Edward's vestry, and for exactly 42 seconds, the entire choir outside falls silent. Not a breath, not a footstep, not a whisper from the 230 palace staff stationed throughout Westminster Abbey. Just the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and tells you, without a single word, that something has gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Catherine stands at the center of the room. Her silver-threaded gown catches the morning light streaming through the narrow vestry window, and her hands, which have been perfectly still all morning, begin to tremble. Not because she is weak, because she is human, and what she has just watched happen in front of her dresser, in front of the chief historian, in front of God and the ancient stone walls of Westminster Abbey, is the kind of thing that cannot be unseen. The Windsor Crown is on the floor, not resting, not placed, on the floor, its golden frame twisted at an angle that makes the chief historian, a 73-year-old man named Alistair Vance, press both hands flat against his chest like he is physically holding his heart inside his body. The central ruby, a deep blood-red stone the size of a man's thumbnail, has rolled free of its setting. It moves slowly across the uneven stone floor, spinning in a lazy circle, catching light, until it stops. It stops at the toe of Camilla's shoe. Hi viewers, here's what I need you to tell me in the comments right now. If you were standing in that room and you watched what Catherine just watched, would you stay silent? Or would you say something? Also, don't forget to click that subscribe button before we continue. 312 years of royal history, gone in 4 seconds. That is what the Windsor Crown represents. Not just diamonds, not just Burmese rubies. It is a consecrated artifact, handcrafted in the Victorian era, worn by the Queen Mother on the most sacred occasions of the 20th century. It has survived 2 world wars, an abdication crisis, and the death of a beloved princess. It has never, in its entire existence, touched the floor of any room in any palace or abbey in the British Isles. Until this morning, the dresser, a young woman named Amara Osei, stands with both hands pressed over her mouth. Her eyes move from the crown to Camilla and back to the crown, and the expression on her face is not confusion. Amara knows what she saw. She was standing at the correct angle. Her job requires her to be positioned exactly 3 feet to Catherine's left at all times, and from that position, she had a clear, unobstructed view of every move made in the 10 seconds before the crown hit the floor. Camilla has not moved. That is the detail that will matter later. Every other person in the room has lurched forward, stepped back, gasped, or reached out instinctively. The human body reacts to sudden destruction. It is wired to respond. But Camilla stands exactly where she stood before the crack, her ceremonial train pooled around her feet, her chin slightly raised, her pale blue eyes moving downward to the twisted crown with the kind of slowness that is not shock. Shock makes you flinch. Shock makes your hands shake. Camilla's hands are perfectly still. Catherine's eyes move from the crown on the floor to Camilla's face, and in that single moment, something shifts behind Catherine's expression. Something quiet and devastating. Her lips press together. Her chin lifts by exactly 1 degree, and the room, already silent, somehow becomes more silent, as if the walls themselves are leaning in. Outside, the choir finds its voice again. The organ swells. Somewhere beyond the ancient wooden doors, 2 billion people are watching a coronation they believe is proceeding exactly as planned. They have no idea what is happening in this room. And as Camilla finally opens her mouth, as the first syllable of her carefully constructed apology begins to form on her lips, a single question hangs in the vestry air like smoke. Was this really an accident? Amara Osei moves first. She crosses the vestry floor in 4 quick steps, drops to her knees beside the crown, and her white-gloved hands hover over the broken frame without touching it, the way a surgeon hovers over a patient they are not yet sure they can save. The golden setting is bent. Not cracked all the way through, but bent, at the exact point where the central ruby sat secured in its claw mount for over a century. The ruby itself is 3 feet away, still warm from the heat of the display lights, resting against the cold stone. The Windsor Crown was never simply jewelry. Every woman who had ever worn it understood that the moment the velvet cushion was placed in front of her, it was a transfer, a weight that moved from one generation to the next and carried with it every promise made to the British people by every woman in that line before her. The Queen Mother wore it the year the country was still pulling itself from the rubble of the Second World War. She wore it as a signal to the nation that the family was still standing, still holding, still present. That signal did not come from the gold. It came from the willingness to carry the weight. Catherine understood this. She had spent 6 months in private preparation for this morning. Not rehearsing the walk, not practicing the curtsy, not memorizing the order of ceremony. She had spent those months understanding the crown, reading letters, studying photographs, sitting in the quiet of Kensington's private archive with her hands folded in her lap, asking questions that had nothing to do with protocol and everything to do with meaning. What did it feel like to wear it? What did the women before her think about in the seconds before it was placed on their heads? She had wanted to be ready in the right way, and now it is on the floor. Camilla's apology is still forming. The words are coming slowly, draped in the particular tone she uses at charity luncheons when something goes mildly wrong with the seating arrangement. A controlled, cushioned voice. The voice of a woman who has spent decades learning how to appear distressed without actually being distressed. "Oh, Catherine, I am so terribly sorry. My footing, the weight of these robes, the carpet is terribly uneven near the—" Catherine does not respond. This is the detail that the room notices. Not Camilla's apology. Catherine's silence. Because Catherine is not a woman who goes quiet out of weakness. The palace staff who have worked alongside her for years know the difference between her gracious public silence and the silence she uses when she is processing something she did not expect. This silence is the second kind. Her eyes are steady. Her breathing is controlled. But her right hand, resting at her side, has curled into a slow, deliberate fist. Alistair Vance, still pressing his hands to his chest, looks between the two women. His voice, when it comes, is barely above a whisper. "We must notify the Archbishop immediately. There are protocols for—" "Give us a moment, Alistair." Catherine's voice is quiet, but it is not a request. He stops. Amara rises from her knees, the ruby cradled in her gloved palm, and steps back toward the wall without being told. The other staff member present, a young palace aide named Darius Mensa, moves to the door and places his back against it. He does not leave. He does not speak. He simply positions himself between the room and the outside world, because something in Catherine's tone told every person in that vestry that what happens next is not for anyone outside this room to hear. Camilla looks at the door, then back at Catherine. And for the first time this morning, her perfectly composed expression develops the smallest crack. Not guilt, not fear. Something that sits just beneath both of those things and is harder to name. Her chin lowers by half an inch. Her eyes drop briefly to the floor, then rise again. "Catherine, truly, Where were you standing?" Catherine says. "Before it fell?" The question lands in the room like a stone dropped in still water. Clean, precise, expanding. Camilla's mouth opens, then closes. Outside, the organ music builds toward the processional. The choir lifts their voices. The abbey holds its breath, and 40 feet away from where they stand, a throne waits for a woman who is now standing barefoot on cold stone in front of a broken crown, asking a question that she already knows the answer to. The room does not breathe. And Camilla, for once in 30 years, has nothing ready to say. There is a particular kind of resentment that does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself at dinner tables or in press statements. It does not erupt. It accumulates. Year after year, in quiet rooms and crowded ballrooms and long car rides where two people sit beside each other and say all the correct things while thinking something else entirely. It builds in the body the way water builds behind a dam, invisible from the outside, immense from within, and by the time anyone sees the crack, the pressure behind it has been growing for decades. Camilla's crack has been growing for 30 years. She had earned her place. That was the part that no public narrative ever gave her full credit for, and the omission had calcified inside her chest into something she carried everywhere. She had waited. She had been patient in ways that most people never understood and never would. She had sat through funerals and jubilees and anniversaries and state dinners while a nation looked through her as if she were made of glass. She had smiled through the Diana comparisons, through the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, through the years of tabloid cruelty, through the cold politeness of palace staff who never quite forgave her for existing. She had gotten through all of it, and then Catherine arrived. Not with fanfare, not with scandal. Catherine arrived quietly, perfectly, with that particular combination of genuine warmth and studied grace that made people feel both seen and impressed at the same time. The public fell. The press followed. And within 5 years of that white dress on those cathedral steps, the whispers that had once circled Diana's memory and landed on Camilla like accusations began circling Catherine's presence instead. Not as a comparison to Diana, as a continuation. The people's princess had become the people's queen. And Camilla, who had survived everything, found that she could not survive being erased by someone who wasn't even trying to erase her. This mourning has been building since the first announcement of the coronation date. Camilla had sat with it privately, turning it over in her mind the way you turn over a stone to see what lives underneath. Catherine would wear the Windsor Crown. Catherine would stand at the center of the abbey. Catherine's face would be on every front page, every screen, every commemorative plate sold in every tourist shop from London to Edinburgh. And Camilla would be present, ceremonially present, a woman in a good seat at someone else's most important day. She had not made a decision in the dressing room. That is what she would tell herself later, in the long silences of the North. There had been no moment of cold calculation, no internal monologue of intent. There had only been a fraction of a second, a narrow window in which Alistair Vance turned his back to reach for the velvet storage case, and Camilla's heavy ceremonial train was already sweeping the floor in that direction, and her body made a choice that her conscious mind had never fully formed. But Amara Osei was standing at the correct angle, and Darius Mensah had been watching the room, not the crown. Inside the vestry right now, the question Catherine asked is still hanging in the air. Camilla has not answered it. She has assembled her expression back into something resembling distress, and she is drawing breath to begin again, to build the explanation that will sound reasonable and remorseful and entirely convincing to anyone who was not in the room. Except every person in this room was in the room. Catherine watches her. Not with anger. The absence of anger is the thing that makes it worse. Catherine watches Camilla with the expression of a woman who has just been handed a piece of information she did not want and is now quietly deciding what to do with it. Her eyes are clear, her jaw is set, and her right hand, still curled at her side, opens slowly, finger by finger, like a woman releasing something she no longer needs to hold on to. Camilla begins to move. Not toward Catherine, not toward the door, toward the crown, toward the bent golden frame still lying on the cold stone floor, as if proximity to the damage might allow her to reshape the narrative around it. Her velvet train sweeps behind her, heavy and slow, and the sound of it against the floor fills the silent room like a warning. She is 3 steps away from the crown when she stops, because the door opens, not with a knock, not with an announcement. The door to St. Edward's vestry opens with the specific, deliberate force of a man who does not require permission to enter any room in any building in the United Kingdom. And the air in the vestry changes the way air changes before a storm, not louder, but heavier, charged with something that raises the fine hairs on the back of every neck in the room. Camilla turns, and William is standing in the doorway. He does not look at the crown. That is the first thing the room registers. Every instinct in every person present pulls their eyes toward the broken Windsor crown on the floor, toward the twisted gold and the absent ruby, toward the most immediately visible evidence of what has happened. But William's eyes do not go to the floor. They go to Camilla, directly, completely, with the kind of focused stillness that makes the air in a room feel smaller. He steps inside. The door closes behind him without anyone touching it, pulled shut by the guard positioned outside, a broad-shouldered man named Leopold Sterling, who has worked royal protection for 11 years and who, in those 11 years, has learned to read a room through a door. The vestry is silent. William crosses to the center of the room in 6 steps. He does not hurry. He does not slow. His pace is the pace of a man who has already decided what he is doing and is simply executing it, calmly, the way you execute something you have rehearsed. He stops at the spot where the ruby rests on the floor, 3 feet from the crown's bent frame, and he crouches down in his full ceremonial uniform, the gold braid catching the morning light, and he picks it up. He holds it between his thumb and forefinger, turns it once, sets it in his palm. Then he stands and looks at Camilla. William. Her voice reaches for something warm and uses his name as a life raft. Thank God you're here. It was a terrible accident. The carpet near the pedestal is completely... Camilla. 1 word. Her name, spoken without heat, without volume, and it is somehow more silencing than a shout. She stops. Amara Osei, still standing against the wall, presses her back harder into the stone. Darius Mensa at the door does not move. Alistair Vance watches William with the expression of a man witnessing something he will spend the rest of his life describing to people who will not fully believe him. Catherine stands to William's left. She has not moved from her position since the crown fell. Her silver gown is still perfectly arranged. Her hair is still flawlessly set. From the outside, from any angle that does not include her eyes, she looks like a woman who is simply waiting. But her eyes tell a different story. They are on William, not pleadingly, not gratefully, just watching him with the quiet certainty of a woman who has spent enough time beside this man to know exactly what his stillness means. His stillness means he already knows. Camilla reads this too. She is a woman who has spent her entire adult life inside the machinery of the British royal family, and she knows how to read a room, how to read a face, how to identify the precise moment when a situation shifts from manageable to something else. She has survived moments that would have broken other people by recognizing that shift early enough to adapt. She is recognizing the shift right now. Her chin lifts. Her hands, which had been drifting toward each other in a gesture of distress, separate and fall to her sides. Her voice, when it comes again, drops from the warm register to the level tone she uses when she wants to be taken seriously. I understand this is upsetting, truly, but these things happen, William. Old buildings, uneven stone, heavy ceremonial clothing. There will be another crown arranged. The ceremony can. Show me where you were standing, William says. When it fell. Camilla blinks. I beg your pardon? Your position. He gestures toward the pedestal. Show me where you were standing. The request is simple. It is the simplest possible request. Any innocent person answers it immediately, walks to the spot, points, explains. The body moves before the mind catches up because there is nothing to calculate. But Camilla does not move immediately. There is a pause. Brief, controlled, but present, and in that pause, 3 people in the room make a decision about what they believe. Amara makes hers. Darius makes his. Alistair makes his. Camilla walks to the spot. She points. She explains. She uses the word footing twice and the word weight 3 times. And the explanation is smooth and coherent and detailed in exactly the way a truthful account should be. But she is pointing to a location that is 8 inches too far from the pedestal for her train to have snagged the base the way she described. William does not correct her. He does not point this out. He looks at the spot she is indicating, then at the pedestal, then at the crown on the floor, and he performs a simple visual calculation that takes approximately 2 seconds. Then he reaches inside his ceremonial jacket. Camilla watches his hand. The room watches his hand. And when his fingers close around the edge of a small rectangular device and begin to draw it slowly out, the temperature in the vestry drops by what feels like 10 degrees. He holds the tablet up. He does not press play yet. He simply holds it, screen facing Camilla, and says 3 words in a voice so quiet that Alistair Vance, standing 8 feet away, will later tell his wife that he had to read William's lips to be certain he heard them correctly. I was watching. Camilla's face does something extraordinary. It does not collapse. It does not crumble the way a guilty person's face collapses in films, in the dramatic, all-at-once way that makes guilt legible and clear. It does something more precise and more revealing than that. It rearranges, feature by feature, in real time, the expression she has been wearing, which was constructed from equal parts distress and injured dignity, shifts into something else. Something that is trying very hard to remain composed and is only partially succeeding. Her eyes go to the tablet, then to William's face, then back to the tablet. She does not ask what is on it. That is the tell. An innocent woman asks. An innocent woman says, "What is that? What are you showing me? What does that have to do with anything?" The question comes automatically, reflexively, because innocence has nothing to protect and therefore nothing to calculate. But Camilla does not ask. Her mouth opens and closes once, the way a word got started and then got recalled before it reached the air, and then she is still. The room has stopped breathing. William presses play. The footage is from a high angle, slightly to the left of the pedestal, installed 3 days earlier by the palace's internal security unit, a team so discreet that their work gets done in the hours between 3 and 5 in the morning when the building is as empty as a building like Westminster Abbey ever gets. The lens is small. The resolution is not. Every detail in the frame is sharp and clear, lit by the same morning light that currently fills the vestry, because the camera was calibrated specifically for this room at this hour. The footage shows Camilla entering the vestry 7 minutes ago. It shows her moving to the left side of the room, which placed her directly beside the pedestal. It shows Alistair Vance turning to reach for the velvet storage case, his back to the crown for 11 seconds. And in those 11 seconds, it shows Camilla's right foot moving in a short, sharp arc. Not a stumble, not a trip. A deliberate lateral movement that connects with the base of the pedestal with enough controlled force to send the crown cushion tilting forward. It shows the crown falling. And it shows, for a fraction of a second, a fraction so brief that you would miss it if you blinked, the expression that crosses Camilla's face in the instant after the gold hits the floor, before she composes herself for the room. Before the distress. Before the apology. Satisfaction. Cold, brief, and completely unmistakable. Amara Osei makes a sound against the wall. It is barely a sound at all, more like a sharp exhale. But in the silence of the vestry it is loud as a shout. Darius Mensa, at the door, looks at the ceiling for a moment, jaw tight. Alistair Vance sits down on the nearest chair without being invited, because his legs have made the decision for him. Camilla watches herself on the screen. William lowers the tablet. He does not speak. He does not need to. The footage has said everything that could be said, and the silence that follows it is not the silence of uncertainty. It is the silence of a verdict. Catherine has been watching Camilla's face during the playback, not the screen. She has been watching the precise moment when Camilla recognized herself in the footage, and the precise moment when Camilla understood that recognition was shared by every person in the room. She watched the rearrangement happen. She watched the calculation behind the eyes. And now she is watching Camilla stand in the vestry of Westminster Abbey, on the morning of the coronation, with the evidence of what she did playing on a loop in the mind of every witness present, and try to locate the version of this moment that she can survive. This is not, Camilla begins. What it? Don't. Catherine's voice is soft, almost gentle, the kind of gentle that has iron underneath it. The kind of gentle that a woman uses when she has decided she is done being careful with someone. Please don't. Camilla closes her mouth. The organ swells outside. The choir rises. The ancient abbey is filling with the sound of a ceremony that the world believes is running perfectly, smoothly, as planned. In here, William looks at his wife. Just for a moment. A look that carries everything he cannot say in front of witnesses. Every apology for the family he was born into. Every promise he has already made and intends to keep. And Catherine receives it with a single, small nod that closes the exchange completely. Then William turns back to Camilla, slides the tablet back inside his jacket, and says something so quiet, so controlled, so stripped of all ceremony that it sounds like the end of something. Camilla's knees weaken, just slightly, just enough that her hand reaches for the edge of the nearest wooden table to steady herself. Because what William just told her is not a threat. It is a door, closing, and on the other side of it is everything she has ever wanted, every room she has ever fought to remain inside, every spotlight she has spent 30 years positioning herself beneath. And the lock is already turning. Leopold Sterling does not move from the door. That detail matters. Because Leopold has worked royal protection for 11 years, and in those 11 years, he has learned that the most important thing a protection officer can do in a volatile room is not intervene. It is to be the unmovable wall between whatever is happening inside and the rest of the world outside. He stands at that door with his hands clasped at his waist and his eyes forward, and nothing from beyond that threshold is getting in, and nothing from inside this room is getting out. William knows this. He positioned Leopold there himself 3 days ago. Planning ahead is the habit of a man who has been watching, waiting, and preparing for the precise moment when preparation becomes necessary. William has been doing exactly that since the week the coronation date was announced. Not because he wanted to believe this moment would come. Because he loved his wife too much to be unprepared if it did. He turns away from Camilla now. Fully. Deliberately. The way you turn away from something you have already decided about. He walks to Catherine, and when he reaches her, he does something that no camera in any public space will ever capture, because this moment belongs only to the people in this room. He takes her right hand, the one that had curled into a fist and then opened again, and he holds it between both of his. Steady. Warm. Absolute. Catherine exhales. One breath. Just one. But it carries everything she has been holding since the crown hit the floor, and the people who witness it, Amara, Darius, Alistair, will each carry the image of that exhale for the rest of their lives because it is the most honest thing they will see inside a palace in their entire careers. Amara. William does not raise his voice. He never raises his voice. Please take the princess to the East Chamber. Genevieve is waiting. Amara moves immediately. She is at Catherine's side in 3 steps, the ruby still secure in her white-gloved palm, and she positions herself with the practiced precision of someone who has spent years being exactly where she needs to be at exactly the right moment. Catherine straightens. Her chin lifts. She looks at William once more, and the look is not helpless and it is not grateful in the way that weakness is grateful. It is the look of a woman who trusts the person she has chosen completely and is walking forward on the strength of that trust. She does not look at Camilla. Not once. Not on the way to the door. Not as Amara opens it and Leopold shifts to allow them through. Not as the sound of the abbey, all organ and choir and 2 billion watching hearts, rushes briefly into the vestry and then is sealed away again as the door closes. Camilla watches her go. And the absence of Catherine's gaze is worse than any accusation she could have made. To be looked through. To be considered unworthy of a final glance. To stand in the vestry of Westminster Abbey with the evidence of what you did in a dead man's pocket and be treated as something already dealt with. Camilla has craved significance her entire public life. This is its opposite. The room is smaller now. Alistair Vance has not moved from his chair. Darius Mensa remains at the secondary door. And William stands in the center of the vestry, the ruby still in his closed left hand, and he looks at his stepmother with the expression of a man who has rehearsed this moment in his mind enough times that the emotion has been replaced by something quieter and more final. Resolution. William, I think we should. Alistair, William says, without taking his eyes off Camilla. Please step outside with Darius for 5 minutes. Alistair stands immediately. Darius opens the door. And then they are gone, and the vestry holds only 2 people, and the weight of everything unspoken between them, and the distant sound of a ceremony that the world believes is unfolding perfectly. Camilla draws herself up. It is a physical act, visible and deliberate, the squaring of shoulders, the lifting of a chin, the assembly of a posture that says she is not finished, she is not beaten, she has survived worse than this and come out standing. She looks at William with eyes that are trying very hard to be steady. Whatever you think you saw on that footage, William reaches into his jacket again. But this time he does not produce the tablet. He produces something else entirely. A single folded document, cream-colored, with a wax seal at the bottom that Camilla recognizes before he has fully unfolded it. Her breath catches. Just once. An involuntary, biological response to seeing something she was not supposed to know existed yet. Her hand tightens on the edge of the table behind her, and William looks at her over the top of the document with the steady, winter morning eyes of a man who has not one weapon in this room. He has 3. The document is 1 page. Camilla stares at it from 4 feet away and does not move toward it, the way you do not move toward something you are hoping will turn out to be something other than what you already know it is. Her eyes track the wax seal first, then the header text, then the signature lines at the bottom, 2 of them, one already bearing a signature she recognizes as belonging to the King's private legal counsel. The second line is blank, but it has her name printed beneath it. William holds it steady. He does not offer it to her. He does not wave it or use it as punctuation for a speech. He simply holds it where she can see it clearly, and he lets the silence do the work that words would only clutter. Camilla swallows. What is that? It is not a question. The inflection is flat. The voice of a woman who is asking a question she already knows the answer to and is buying herself 4 seconds to construct a response to what comes next. It's a behavioral covenant, William says. It outlines the conditions of your continued residence within the royal household going forward. It was prepared 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. The words land in Camilla's chest like something physical. 6 weeks ago, she was attending a garden reception at Highgrove. 6 weeks ago, she was seated at the head of a luncheon table, being photographed with charitable foundation representatives, smiling in the particular practiced way she had perfected across decades of public life. 6 weeks ago, William and Catherine were standing in a private meeting room with a legal team, preparing for a version of today that Camilla was not aware existed. She had not seen this coming. That is the part that strips the composure from her face for just a moment, raw and unguarded, before she pulls it back. She had not seen this coming, and for a woman who has prided herself on reading the machinery of this family better than almost anyone alive, that failure of foresight feels like the ground dropping away beneath her feet. "You had this prepared," she says slowly, "before today. The footage from this morning confirms the necessity." William folds the document with one hand, the motion clean and practiced. But the covenant was always coming, Camilla. Today simply accelerated the timeline. She looks at him for a long moment. The chandeliers above the vestry throw soft gold light across the room, and in that light, with his ceremonial uniform and the ruby still closed in his left fist, William looks less like a man having a confrontation and more like a man closing a chapter of a book he has been reading for years. "The shadow transition," Camilla says. The words are careful, measured, like she is testing whether saying them out loud confirms that she knows what they mean. William does not answer that directly. He does not need to. The shadow transition was the name given internally to a months-long, deliberately quiet restructuring of the working royal framework. Not a public announcement, not a press release. A structural shift in how decisions were made, which advisors held access, which channels of communication ran through which offices. It had been executed incrementally, invisibly, the way major institutional changes always are when the people executing them understand that visibility creates resistance. By the time Camilla had begun to sense something was different about the flow of information reaching her, the transition was already 80% complete. She had attributed the feeling to the general disruption of the coronation preparations. She had told herself it was temporary. She had told herself the center would reassert itself after today, that the ceremony would restore the familiar order of things. She had told herself a great many things that were not true. William taps the screen of the tablet, and the footage plays again on the small screen, visible only to him. He watches it for 3 seconds, then stops it, and looks at Camilla over the edge of the device with an expression that carries no anger, no triumph, and no hesitation. "There are 3 cameras in this vestry," he says. "The one you didn't know about. The one you checked for when you entered the room." He pauses. "And a third one, positioned behind the painting on the east wall, which captured everything from an angle that makes the footage from the first camera look ambiguous by comparison." Camilla's hand, still on the edge of the table, whitens at the knuckles. "I am not calling the guards," William continues. "I am not contacting the press. I am not initiating any formal proceeding that would require public disclosure, legal testimony, or media coverage of any kind." He lets that sit for exactly 2 seconds. "Because that is not what this is." Camilla exhales slowly. Something in her posture begins to soften, a micro-relaxation, the physical reflex of a woman who is hearing words that sound like they might be leading toward mercy. She is wrong. "What this is," William says, "is the end of your public role, effective this morning, permanent, quiet, and completely, entirely on your own terms, as far as the rest of the world is ever going to know." He places the folded document on the pedestal where the Windsor Crown sat an hour ago. Then he steps back. And Camilla looks at the document on that empty pedestal, in the place where the crown should be, and understands with complete clarity that William has just handed her the neatest, most devastating trap she has ever seen constructed. Because if she refuses to sign it, the footage goes public. And if she signs it, she disappears. Either way, she loses. The pen is already on the pedestal. Camilla did not see William place it there. She was looking at the document, at the cream paper and the wax seal and the blank signature line with her name beneath it, and at some point between that moment and this one, a slim black pen appeared beside the folded page as if the room itself had placed it there. A small thing, practical thing, the most ordinary object in an extraordinary room. It is the most threatening thing she has ever seen. Her legs carry her to the pedestal slowly, not because she has decided to sign, because her body needs to be closer to the document to confirm that what she is reading is what she thinks she is reading. Her eyes move across the text, line by line, and with each line the room gets smaller, the walls press inward, and the sound of the abbey outside, all that triumphant organ music and swelling choir, becomes a kind of punishment she did not anticipate. The behavioral covenant is precise. A legal team that understood exactly what it was building wrote every clause. No public engagements, no press interviews, no correspondence with media organizations, no public statements of any kind through any intermediary on any platform under any name. Residence to be maintained at the North Lodge of Birkhall Estate in the Scottish Highlands, with limited travel permissions subject to written approval from the Prince of Wales's office. Quarterly reviews. 0 exceptions. It is not prison. It is something that people who have spent their lives in the light understand to be much worse than prison. It is invisibility. Enforced, documented, permanent invisibility, delivered not through bars and locks but through paperwork and politeness, which is the cruelest possible way the British establishment knows how to remove someone from the world. Camilla's mouth is dry. She turns from the document and looks at William. He is standing by the window now, his back partially to her, the morning light cutting across his profile. He is not watching her read. He does not need to. He has read it himself more times than she has, and he knows every word in it the way you know every word in something you have spent months building. Birkhall, she says. The word comes out flat. The North Lodge is fully staffed, William says. 2 housekeepers, a groundskeeper, a private physician on weekly rotation. You will be comfortable. Comfortable. She repeats the word the way you repeat a word in a foreign language that you recognize but have not heard used to describe your own situation before. Camilla. William turns from the window. His voice drops half a register, and what enters it is not warmth but something adjacent to it. The acknowledgement of a shared history, however complicated, however painful. You have a choice here. That is more than what you offered Catherine this morning. The sentence hits her in a place that is undefended. Because it is true. That is the unbearable part of it. The trap is built entirely from truth, and there is no angle from which she can approach it and find a gap, a flaw, a thread she can pull to unravel it. She cannot claim the footage is edited. She cannot claim the covenant is illegal. She cannot call a sympathetic journalist, because the first clause of the covenant covers exactly that action, and William has the footage ready to transmit to 47 news organizations in 4 countries inside 30 seconds. She has spent 30 years learning the machinery of this family, and William spent the last 6 months building a new machine entirely. Outside, a roar rises from the crowd gathered along the Abbey processional route. Not a polite, ceremonial cheer. A full-throated, spontaneous eruption of sound, the kind that happens when a crowd sees something that moves them beyond the reach of protocol. Camilla's eyes go to the window. She cannot see the crowd from here, but she can hear them, and the sound of 100,000 people feeling something genuine all at once is a sound she knows well because she has spent decades standing close enough to it to absorb it secondhand. That sound will not be for her today. It will never be for her again. Her hand moves to the pen. It hovers there above the document, above the blank signature line, above the printed letters of her name, for a long moment. Long enough that Darius Mensa, who has re-entered the room quietly and is standing once again at the secondary door, looks away to give her what little privacy this moment allows. She signs. The motion is quick, practiced. The signature of a woman who has signed her name on thousands of documents across decades of public life, and who signs this one with the same pen pressure and the same slight rightward lean that she has used on every other document, because even now, even in this, Camilla's hand does not shake. She straightens, sets the pen down, does not look at William. "When does the car come?" she says. "Sunset," William says. She nods once. A single, precise nod like a period at the end of a sentence. And then she walks to the far corner of the vestry, away from the pedestal, away from the document, away from William and the ruby in his fist and the footage in his jacket, and she stands with her back partially to the room, facing the ancient stone wall, and she is very, very still. William picks up the signed document, folds it once, places it inside his jacket beside the tablet. He looks at Camilla's back for 3 seconds. Then he walks to the vestry door, signals Leopold Sterling, and steps out into the corridor where Alistair Vance is waiting, pale and wide-eyed, with the news that the East Chamber is ready. The door closes behind him, and Camilla stands alone in St. Edward's vestry, in the most famous religious building in the English-speaking world, on the morning that was supposed to be her final, defining moment of relevance, and she listens to the crowd outside grow louder and louder and louder. For someone else. The bells ring at 11:47. Not the careful, measured toll of ceremony. The full peal. All 12 bells of Westminster Abbey released together in one cascading, overlapping wave of sound that rolls across London like a physical force, rattling windows in Whitehall, carrying across the Thames, reaching into neighborhoods where people who could not get tickets to the route have gathered on doorsteps and in pub doorways with their hands pressed to their hearts. The coronation of Catherine, Princess of Wales, has begun. Inside the East Chamber, 40 feet and one locked corridor away from where Camilla stands against a stone wall, Genevieve Thorne finishes the final adjustment to the piece resting on Catherine's head and steps back. She does not speak. She looks, and what she sees makes her press her lips together and breathe slowly through her nose, the physical response of a woman trying to compose herself in a professional setting. The flower crown is made of silver wire and hand-cut crystal, each piece shaped and set by a craftsman named Kofi Asante, who was given the commission 4 months ago and told only that it needed to carry the weight of a legacy without carrying any gold. He had asked no further questions. He had understood the assignment completely. It frames Catherine's face like morning light. It is not the Windsor Crown. It does not have 312 years of history. It does not have Victorian diamonds or Burmese rubies or a frame bent by the deliberate force of a woman's foot on a cold stone floor. What it has is something the Windsor Crown, for all its grandeur, cannot manufacture. It is new. It is hers. It is chosen. Amara Osei stands to Catherine's left, the ruby from the Windsor Crown now secured in a small velvet pouch in her jacket pocket, catalogued and preserved for the palace historians. She watches Catherine look at herself in the long mirror at the east wall of the chamber, and she watches the exact moment when Catherine stops looking at what she is wearing and starts looking at who she is. The shift is visible. The shoulders settle. The jaw relaxes. The eyes go from assessing to certain, and once they make that crossing, they do not go back. "Ready?" Genevieve asks. Catherine takes one breath. Yes. The processional doors open. The sound that enters the chamber when those doors open is not describable in any vocabulary that belongs to ordinary experience. It is every voice in Westminster Abbey and every voice in the crowd outside and every bell in every tower contributing simultaneously to a single moment, and Catherine walks into it the way you walk into the ocean, fully, deliberately, without flinching at the cold. The U.S. broadcast anchor, a woman named Rochelle Baptiste, who has covered 6 major royal events and considers herself unshakable, goes quiet in the middle of her commentary sentence and does not finish it for 11 seconds. Her producer, watching from the control room, does not prompt her. He is also quiet. The control room is also quiet. Every person watching a screen anywhere in the United States who has been awake since 4 in the morning to watch this ceremony feels something lift in their chest at the same moment, and none of them can name exactly what it is. It is relief. The specific, complex, deeply personal relief of watching someone who was knocked down get back up in a way that is better than what they had before. Not despite the difficulty. Because of it. The flower crown catches the abbey light differently than gold would have caught it. Gold reflects, crystal refracts, breaks the light into smaller pieces and sends it in more directions, and the effect, under the abbey's chandeliers, is that Catherine appears to be wearing something alive. The British press photographers, positioned in the designated media enclosures, fire their shutters simultaneously at the moment she reaches the center of the aisle, and several of them will later describe the image in their viewfinders as the best photograph they have ever taken. In Chicago, a 71-year-old woman named Dorothea Webb watches from her living room sofa with both hands clasped under her chin and tears running down her face. She cannot explain why she is crying. She tells her daughter, who is watching from the armchair across the room, that it is because Catherine looks like herself. Her daughter nods and does not say anything because she is also crying. In Atlanta, in Houston, in Detroit, in Philadelphia, in living rooms and coffee shops and hospital waiting areas where the television is on in the corner, the same quiet eruption happens over and over. The recognition of grace. The satisfaction of watching someone refuse to be diminished. The ceremony proceeds. At the moment of the blessing, when the Archbishop lowers his hands over Catherine's bowed head, and the abbey reaches its quietest point, a single camera in the BBC broadcast feed cuts to the royal family seating area. The shot holds for 4 seconds, long enough for every viewer in every country watching the broadcast to register what they are seeing. The Queen Consort's chair is empty. No announcement has been made. No explanation has been offered. The production team has been instructed to hold the shot for exactly 4 seconds and then cut away, which they do, moving to the wide abbey angle that captures the full sweep of the ceremony. But 4 seconds is enough. 4 seconds is a lifetime in broadcast television. 4 seconds plants a question in the mind of every person watching that no amount of carefully worded palace statements will fully answer. Where is Camilla? The question moves through social media in the United States before the ceremony has reached its midpoint. Not with answers. With speculation, with concern, with the particular fever of millions of people all pulling at the same thread at the same moment. By the time William and Catherine appear on the Abbey steps, the question has reached a volume that the palace communications team is tracking in real time with the expression of people who knew this was coming and prepared for it and are still slightly surprised by how fast it arrived. William stands at the top of the steps. He looks out at the crowd, at the sea of faces and phones and flags, at the people who came from every corner of the country and stood for hours in the April cold to be present for this moment. And then he looks at his wife. Catherine is looking at the crowd. She is not performing. She is not projecting. She is simply present, genuinely, completely present, in the way that cannot be taught or manufactured and that people can feel through a screen from 3,000 miles away. The crystal crown sends light in every direction. The crowd does not cheer. They roar. William reaches for Catherine's hand. She gives it to him. And in the private language of two people who have been through something together that the rest of the world does not fully know about yet, the pressure of that grip says everything. It is over. You are here. It worked. Below them, on the street, a woman in the third row named Celestine Adeyemi has been standing since 6 in the morning. She is 68 years old. She traveled from Birmingham, and she brought a handmade sign that says simply, in large block letters, "We see you, Catherine." She holds it above her head with both hands, and Catherine, scanning the crowd, finds it. She finds it, and she holds it with her eyes for 3 full seconds. Then she smiles. Not the public smile. The real one. The one that starts at the eyes and moves downward. The one that people who have seen it up close say is the most disarming thing about her. The way it looks exactly like a woman who is genuinely, unexpectedly, completely happy. The cameras catch it. Every single one of them. And that image, Catherine on the Abbey steps in the crystal flower crown, holding a Birmingham woman's sign with her eyes, smiling the real smile, goes around the world in under 4 minutes. The car leaves at sunset. A single black vehicle, unmarked, moving north out of London through the early evening light. No escort, no press vehicle following, no announcement on any palace channel, any social media account, or any briefing to any journalist in any country. The palace's official statement, released at 4:47 in the afternoon, uses the words health advisory and private recovery, and the Queen Consort extends her warmest congratulations. And it is written so cleanly and so carefully that it answers no question it appears to be answering. Inside the car, Camilla sits in the dark. The partition between the rear passenger compartment and the driver is closed. The windows are tinted. The seat is leather, the temperature is controlled, and there is water in the cup holder and a blanket folded on the seat beside her, because the North Lodge of Birkhall runs cold in April and someone thought to prepare for that. The car is very comfortable. Camilla does not notice. She is looking at her phone. The palace communications team has left her access to the broadcast feed, which is the kind of decision that looks like courtesy and functions as something else entirely. On the small screen, in the diminishing light of the car's interior, she watches Catherine and William on the Abbey steps. She watches the crowd roar. She watches the flower crown catch the light. She watches the camera find the empty chair in the royal family seating area and hold it for 4 seconds. And she watches the world begin to ask the question that will define the next chapter of her story. She watches all of it. And the worst part, the part that sits in her chest like a stone that will not move, is not the exile. It is not the covenant. It is not the North Lodge or the Scottish cold or the invisibility she is being driven toward at 60 miles an hour through the English countryside. The worst part is the flower crown, because Camilla had believed, in the deepest and most honest part of her calculation, that destroying the Windsor Crown would hollow out Catherine's moment. That without the historic artifact, without the gold and the rubies and the weight of Victorian craftsmanship, the coronation would feel incomplete, reduced, that the absence of the crown would be the thing people remembered, that they would look at Catherine and see lack. She had been completely, entirely wrong. The crown that fell on a cold stone floor this morning gave Catherine something no intact Windsor crown could have given her. It gave her a story. It gave her resilience made visible. It gave her the crystal flower crown that the world is now calling the most beautiful thing worn at any British ceremony in a generation. It gave her the image of a woman who lost something precious and chose something personal, and in doing so became more herself than she had ever publicly been. Camilla had tried to take something from Catherine. Instead, she handed her everything. The car moves north. The London lights fall away behind it, replaced by the motorway, and then by countryside, and then by the particular darkness of rural England at dusk, where the sky goes from orange to purple to a deep, final black. Camilla puts the phone face down on the seat beside her. She does not pick it up again. She looks out the tinted window at the dark. Somewhere ahead of her is a lodge at the edge of a Scottish estate, fully staffed and climate-controlled and entirely without cameras, without press, without the light she has spent 30 years positioning herself inside. It is comfortable. It is quiet. It is the end of the story she spent her whole life trying to write. And somewhere behind her, in a city that is still celebrating, William and Catherine stand on a balcony with their hands joined, and the crowd below them sounds like the whole world cheering at once, because in some ways tonight it is. The moral does not need a speech. It does not need a narrator to underline it or a caption to explain it. It is written in the distance between a tinted car moving north and a balcony blazing with light. It is written in the difference between a woman who tried to control a legacy and a woman who simply lived one. Envy does not steal the light. It just leaves you alone in the dark. And if you have been watching this story from the beginning, If you felt every moment of tension in that vestry, every beat of Catherine's dignity and William's quiet fury, then you already understand what this story is really about. It is about what happens when grace meets malice. Grace wins. Not loudly, not instantly, but permanently. If the story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of that today. Drop a comment telling us which moment hit you hardest. Was it Catherine's silence? William's 3 words? The flower crown? Or the empty chair? We read every single comment, and your voice in this community matters more than you know. Subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications right now, because the next story coming to this channel is one that will leave you speechless. There are details about what happened inside the palace in the weeks before this coronation that have not been told yet. The conversations that took place behind closed doors. The alliances that were built and the ones that were quietly dissolved. The full story of the shadow transition and the man who engineered it. It is coming, and you do not want to miss it. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and we will see you in the next chapter.